Who we choose to build a life with, it's one of the most personal decisions we'll ever make. But what happens when that choice crosses ethnic or racial lines? Well, suddenly, it's not just personal anymore. It becomes a force that's reshaping entire societies and how we think about identity all over the globe. Today, we're going to dig into the data, the stories, and the science behind intermarriage. And we're going to kick things off with a number that might just surprise you. So let's start in a place you might not expect. A huge study in sub-Saharan Africa found that nearly 1 in 5 marriages there are between people from different ethnic groups. That's 19.4%. To give you some context, that is way higher than the interracial marriage rate in the US or the intercaste marriage rate in India. So right off the bat, we can see this isn't some small fringe trend. This is a major demographic reality. But that 19.4% is just an average, and averages can hide the really interesting stuff. When you look closer, the reality on the ground is way more complex. The rate varies wildly from one country to another. Some are way lower, and some just soar past that average. And that variation, that's a huge clue. It tells us there is no single simple story here. Instead, it's a whole complicated mix of history, society, and economics, all shaping who we meet, who we fall in love with, and who we marry. Okay, so if intermarriage is a big and growing trend, the billion-dollar question is, why? Right? What is changing in the world that's making this so much more common? Let's break down the key drivers that researchers keep pointing to. Well, for starters, just think about where we live. For most of human history, people lived in pretty small, uniform communities. But one of the biggest stories of our time is the move to cities. And what do cities do? They physically just smush everyone together. Suddenly, you have all these different ethnic groups living on the same street, in the same buildings, going to the same parks. It just dramatically increases the simple mathematical odds of meeting someone from a different background. Then there's education, which kind of works its magic in 2 ways. First, a lot of research suggests that more schooling tends to make people more tolerant and open-minded. But maybe even more importantly, schools, and especially universities, completely blow up your social circle. Your pool of potential partners is no longer just your village or neighborhood. It's people from all over the country, maybe even all over the world. And don't forget about the economy. It's actually a pretty powerful matchmaker. As societies move away from farming, where you mostly worked with family, and into factories or offices, the workplace becomes another giant melting pot. You're spending 8 hours a day working side by side with colleagues from all walks of life. So you see what's happening here. It's not just one thing. It's all of these forces, moving to cities, getting more education, new kinds of jobs, even changes in family structures, like a drop in polygamy. They're all working together. Researchers have a word for this whole bundle of changes: modernization. And together, these forces are breaking down old barriers and creating brand new opportunities for people to connect. But let's be real. Data and big trends only tell you so much. What's it actually like to be in one of these relationships? What are the real-life ups and downs? Okay, let's zoom in from the big picture stats and get down to the personal, lived experience. Just listen to this quote. It's from a woman named Ana, a Colombian immigrant in Mexico, and it is so telling. It just perfectly captures how complicated and, well, weird family reactions can be. It's not a simple story of rejection or acceptance. In her case, it's this bizarre mix of exoticism, social status, maybe even feeling fashionable. It just goes to show you these relationships are navigated by the entire family, not just the couple. And that journey often seems to follow a few distinct stages. Some research out of Denmark actually mapped this out. It often starts with the honeymoon phase, right? The early days of figuring out compromises like what to cook for dinner. But then comes the nesting phase, and this is when the outside world really starts to intrude. The stares from strangers, the pressure from family. But for many couples who make it through, they reach what's called a reclining phase. This is where they've built a really strong shared we, and their differences just become a normal, celebrated part of their life together. To really get what's going on here, we have to talk about identity itself. Because when 2 people get together, they aren't just 2 individuals. They're each carrying a whole history, a whole social framework tied to their race, their gender, their background. All of it comes with them. And the key concept to understand this is something called intersectionality. It's the idea that you can't just look at one part of a person's identity in isolation. All of our labels, race, gender, class, sexual orientation, they all overlap and interact with each other. And that creates totally unique experiences and, unfortunately, totally unique kinds of stereotypes and discrimination, too. So here's a perfect example of how that works.
Research on stereotypes is pretty eye-opening. There are certain stereotypes associated with gay men, and a different set for black men. But when you look at the stereotypes for gay black men, it's not just a simple mashup of the first two. A whole new, unique set of stereotypes emerges, things that weren't necessarily in either of the original categories. The intersection creates something brand new. 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2 here. It equals 3.
And this doesn't just happen with individuals, it happens on a national scale. Take Mexico's national ideology of mestizaje, this idea that the nation is built on racial mixing. On the surface, it sounds like a beautiful celebration of diversity, right? But in reality, many scholars argue it actually creates a hidden social hierarchy, a system where whiteness is often still seen as the ideal, and other identities, like being Afro-descendant, can get stereotyped or even completely erased from the national story. So let's zoom back out. With intermarriage on the rise all over the world, what does it all mean for the future? Well, the most profound impact, of course, is going to be on the children born from these unions, and through them, on the rest of society. So let's just ask the question directly. What does the research tell us about the kids, the next generation growing up in mixed households? Are they caught between two worlds, or are they actually building bridges between them? A lot of the research points to this really powerful idea that intermarriage isn't just a symptom of a changing world, it's an active engine of social change. The thinking is that by creating families that literally straddle old group boundaries, intermarriage starts to fundamentally weaken those boundaries for everyone. And there's actual data to back this up. A study in the Netherlands looking at black-white couples found a really strong link. Now, this number, B equals 0.55, might look like boring statistics, but what it means is huge. In plain English, it means that kids from mixed marriages had significantly more contact and stronger social ties with the white majority group. That is a substantial effect. It suggests these families really are fostering integration. So, is that it? Is that the whole story? Intermarriage goes up, society gets more integrated, the end? Well, as with pretty much everything we talk about, the reality is a little more complicated than that. Let's add one final layer of nuance here. You really have to look at the two sides of the coin. On one side, absolutely, intermarriage can be an incredible engine for integration, no doubt. But on the other side, sometimes it can actually reinforce the old hierarchies. Remember the Mexico example? If a mixed couple is only accepted because of their social class or how close one partner is to the white ideal, well, then you're not really erasing the boundaries. You're just kind of redrawing them in a more subtle way. And there are a few other things that could put the brakes on this trend. Research shows that in really, really big countries, intermarriage rates tend to be lower, just because there are more opportunities to marry within your own group. And of course, good old-fashioned social pressure and norms can still play a huge role. And here's the ironic part. If one group completely assimilates into another over many generations, the very diversity that allowed for intermarriage in the first place could actually start to disappear. Which leaves us with this final massive question. As our world keeps mixing in ways we've never seen before, are we finally watching those old, rigid boundaries of race and ethnicity start to dissolve? Or are we just getting more creative, finding new and more complicated lines to draw between us and them? The data shows the mixing is real. That much is clear. But what that means for our future, well, that's one of the great unfolding stories of our time.